I'm Paul Verkam, and I'm the Communications Director here at ShelterBox USA, and thrilled to be part of ShelterBox. And we're all really honored and happy to be putting on this annual Women's Day event, which seems to just be building in momentum and the quality of the panelists. But this could not be done if it wasn't for twin hearts, and that is Lily and Belle Hahn. Come on up, please. They are the sponsors of today's event, and they have made this all possible because of their generosity and their awareness and their sensitivity to what's going on around the world. And so, without any further introduction, Lily and Belle Hahn.
Thank you. I know. Thank you, Paul. What an honor. We were so grateful to be asked to support this tonight. It's not only an honor to be with my sister always, but to be at the Music Academy where, we grew up with our other sister, Mindy, who's one of the panelists tonight, and I just feel so lucky to be able to welcome you all this evening to celebrate not only the epic panelists that we're about to hear, but the extraordinary mission of ShelterBox.
What an honor and a gift to be here. And I'd love to start out by everyone just take a breath. In together, and out. Beautiful. Now a little bit of an intention this time. In love, and out gratitude. Really beautiful. Truly to be amongst all of you is such a gift for both of us. And I think just the opportunity to be present and to breathe together is really beautiful. This is such a gift, and we're really excited to present this not only panelist, but a beautiful story.
Yes, and I just wanted to share on a personal note, one of the reasons that I and Lily, of course, feel so strongly about ShelterBox is because of the necessity of safety. And even though we grew up here and in great privilege, I didn't grow up in a very safe environment for multiple other reasons. And so I'm very sensitive to how people feel when they don't feel safe. And home is the most necessary thing so that you can, finding home in yourself and home on the planet. So ShelterBox has become something we've become really involved in and really believe in. Mindy's been a huge inspiration, Carrie Murray, force of nature on every level. And this incredible team, she's incredible. Give it up for Carrie. A true light. Incredible. So I just also wanted to say, so you know, that ShelterBox provides emergency shelter and essential supplies to the most vulnerable after disasters. So often that means women and children who face the greatest challenges in rebuilding their lives. And so I just want to, again, reiterate the importance of safety here for these women. And what an incredible opportunity to also be here with such wonderful conscious men celebrating such incredible women. So thank you also for the men in this room.
Tonight, we would like to introduce you to an incredible story of one of these women and families, Lucy. Here is her story. Thank you.
Belle was nice at all to us. As you could see, Belle touched everybody.
Hello, I'm Carrie Murray, president of ShelterBox USA, here on the island of Kirikou in Grenada. Hurricane Beryl devastated this island in July of this year. Locals describe as the worst storm ever to make landfall on this island. It devastated 98% of the infrastructure here. Because of you, we've been able to help families like Lucy. I had the opportunity to meet Lucy today. Lucy didn't have the opportunity to go into a shelter because Lucy was caring for her disabled son.
I didn't want to go to the shelter with my son. I was not able to take it. So I must stay home to keep him calm, to keep him calm. We stay in the bathroom until everything over. When everything over, we come out, we see everything disappear around us. Yeah, so it was not easy. It was not easy. Get the tent, which I love so bad. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I got this tent with everything inside the bag, with the mosquito net, the light, especially light. The light is wonderful. To use the light in the night for my son. When he get up in the night, he see to go to the bathroom. We are alive. When there is life, there is hope. You will be back and you will be back stronger. We just need the help. It's my little house. My little house. I love it.
ShelterBox has helped over 3,000 people in Carriacou as well as Petite Martinique. We could not do this support without you. So thank you so much for enabling this life-saving work.
Good evening. I want to welcome everyone here to International Women's Day, our special event. We hold these events every single year this week. So Saturday is International Women's Day. It's always on March 8th, but it is so great to come together as we work to really celebrate the achievements of women, but also to continue to push for greater progress. I also want to thank the Hahn sisters. Thank you so much for sponsoring tonight's event. It makes it extra special, so thank you. And I also just want to share a moment about Lucy. So I had the opportunity to meet Lucy last year, and it was a disaster probably many of you never even heard about. Had you heard about this hurricane? No, Hurricane Belle, Category 5 storm. And she is one of the most resilient women I've ever met in my life. She is not only a mother, she is a grandmother. She's in her late 60s. And her son is disabled, and she would not be able to go to an evacuation center. He would not have been able to make it through that. And so she literally hid with him in a bathroom behind a stone wall, and she covered him with her body. And she survived. And I don't know how they made it out of this house. The only thing still standing was that cement wall. But everything was gone. And she was one of the beneficiaries and received essential shelter as well as supplies. And as you can see from that photo of the tent, I'd never seen a tent like this. I've seen thousands of our tents all over the world. But the dignity and the humanity and what she did, she built gardens and sculpture. She put a bathroom in that tent, a kitchen. She made her own furniture. And she said to me over the course of the few days I was working with her, she said she had lost her sewing machine, and she was a main seamstress, and that was her source of income. She lost her sewing machine, and she said she was hoping to get another one, but she was just one of the most productive women I've ever met, resilient. And she said, you know, I'd really like to go to America one day. And people have always said, like, I could really make something of myself if I went there. And she just was I think for me, the vision of hope and inspiration, and somebody who is so resilient. But based on where she was born, like so many people in the world, it determines their fate, right? So we're here, and in my moment of silence, I gave that to Lucy because she is really at the core of what we do every day at ShelterBox. And tonight we're here to talk about women and closing the global gender gap. So these events have gone on for over 100 years. And in 2006, the World Economic Forum created what is the Global Gender Gap Report. Have you heard of that before? Yeah. So it looks at several different indexes. So it looks at everything from health and survival of women. It looks at educational attainment. It looks at political empowerment, and it looks at economic participation. And the goal back in 2006 was to close the global gender gap and have gender parity with men by the year 2030. And that's in line with the global social development goals. Well, the gap is much broader than that. So last year, it comes out every year, midway through the year, and the last report says that it will take us 134 years to close the global gender gap. 5 generations. So I always say, we must do better, right? And we have to do better. And so while we're making progress in health and survival and also educational and attainment, we still fall behind even here in legislation participation, so political participation, as well as economic participation. So I hate to say this, but still, job for job, dollar for dollar, women still even here get paid less than men, right? About 75 cents to every dollar. And also, if you look across the landscape of the United States, there's 12 female governors, 28% participation in Congress. Senator Limon, who you'll meet tonight, our state senator for District 21, also let me know that we've never had a female governor in the state of California. So we have to push. So we do that through lots of ways. You can push through legislation and policies. We also look to really push through resources and funding, but we also push through networks. And this is a network tonight. And this is really important that we're here and that we're having these conversations and that we're aware of just how far we still have to go. So while we're going to celebrate tonight, I also want to have a deep conversation on what more we can continue to do. So why does ShelterBox care about this so much? Well, we are a global humanitarian relief organization, and we focus on one of the biggest issues that's facing our world today, and that is global displacement. More people displaced in our world than any time in recorded history. It grows every day. The UN has estimated it's now over 120 million people that have lost their homes by disaster situations, also conflict situations. So what's happening in places like Gaza, Ukraine, Syria, as well as the impact of climate. And I know there are people even in this room, even here in this county, that many of you I know personally, you've been evacuated. Some of you have lost your homes. Some of you have lost your homes and much worse, lost loved ones and family members. So this is a massive problem plaguing our world. And as a humanitarian relief organization, we focus on one of your basic needs that we all have, and that is shelter. And we focus on the provision of emergency shelter and essential supplies to get you back on your feet when you've lost everything in disaster or conflict situation. And many of us know firsthand that until you have a roof over your head, your life stops. You're not working, your kids aren't going to school, and this is the vital step, the first step in the recovery process. So, why do we care at ShelterBox? Well, we've been at this for 25 years. This is our 25th anniversary this year. And one of the things that we know is that women suffer disproportionately in disaster and conflict situations. So everything from higher death rates, so the Indian Ocean tsunami, women had a 14 times higher death rate in that disaster. Women were home taking care of children, they're taking care of parents and grandparents. They're also not taught to swim and climb trees. And in addition to disaster and conflict settings, if you're a girl, you're 2.5 times more likely to be out of school. Also, women suffer economic losses in both disaster and conflict situations at a much greater rate than men, and they also experience sexual violence. So 1 in 5 women have experienced that in conflict settings. We think the number is much higher because it's self-reported. So women suffer disproportionately in disasters, and actually we had showed a picture of Ukraine. I took the picture at the first month of the war, and what we saw initially with the refugees coming over into Poland from Ukraine, that 90% of the refugees that first month of the war were women and children. Yes, so women suffer disproportionately. However, women are at the absolute core of community recovery and bringing a community back, their families and their communities. I even saw that with Lucy. Not only was she making sure her son had a place to stay, she was also making sure her neighbors were okay. She was helping, and a community leader helping to bring back her community. So at ShelterBox, we prioritize the most vulnerable. Those are often women and children. And we work to provide training and tools and the resources they need to help them rebuild their lives and their communities. So, as we celebrate women tonight, I want to be mindful of people like Lucy. I want to be mindful of the 120 million people displaced in our world today, many of them women. And I am so excited now to invite our amazing panel up to the stage for an intimate discussion. So Trinity Tran, Captain Kelleher, thank you, Mindy Budgor, and Senator Limon. Welcome, ladies. I'm so grateful that you're here. I would say when I was chatting with KEYT today, and they wanted to know about this panel, the first thing that came to mind was fortitude and resilience. And I said to the reporter that all of these women have been in various stages of really tough stuff and extraordinary challenges, amazing difficulties, but you kept going and you kept persevering. So thank you for being here, and I'm so happy that you can share your stories with us. So I am going to start with you, Senator Limon. I want to introduce you first. So Senator Monique Limon is our California State Senator and Vice Chair of the California Women's Caucus. You've championed policies that advance economic opportunity, education, and women's rights. Before the election to the Senate for the 21st District in 2020, you served in the State Assembly and you chaired the Banking and Finance Committee. And I know just last fall, I think we have a picture of this, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Limon's bill, your bill, ensuring medical card debt does not wreck credit ratings, an issue often affecting single women. You also saw another one of your bills passed into law. This is an important one. Your Pay Transparency for Pay Equity Act helps narrow gender and racial wealth gaps. You went to Berkeley, you have a master's from Columbia, and you spent years mentoring UCSB and Santa Barbara City College students, helping them achieve higher education. So, Monique, your question, your leadership in authoring the Pay Transparency for Pay Equity Act, Bill 1162, for which you were honored as the only legislator in the country on the Forbes Future of Work 50 list, has been pivotal in addressing wage disparities. Can you tell us, how do you envision this legislation influencing the broader movement towards pay equity, and what steps should be taken to ensure its effective implementation, particularly for women and people of color who've historically been underpaid?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. Senate Bill 1162 was an effort to try to address the pay equity gap through the lens of transparency. And what the bill ultimately does is it requires companies a certain size, or entities, it's not all companies, entities a certain size of employees or more to disclose the salary range. So from my perspective, I found that I was working and talking to folks, before I was in public office, I myself was in a different job sector. And you apply to jobs, and if you don't have even a minimum understanding of what that salary pays, or what that job pays, and there's not a salary range posted, you're applying blindly. And what the data tells us is that women in particular, that blind process disadvantages them more than any other group. And so this was a bill that, from my perspective, I just knew the difference between, hey, this job has a salary range posted and this one does not. Well, it turns out that so did many people in this country. I never expected that bill to resonate in the way that it did with people in all sectors across this country. When I saw that the news of this bill was going national, I really thought, wow, people get this. Like, they see this and they understand what this means. From my perspective, it was something that I've seen many employers already do, so I wasn't doing something new. The new piece, I think, or the different piece, was requiring it. And as one might imagine, it had pretty significant opposition from folks. And I found what was really fascinating is that at times, some of the entities that opposed it in writing, and then the people who worked there were like, please pass it, please pass it, please pass it. And I was like, wow, what is going on? So we moved it forward. Governor Newsom signed the bill. And then after a few weeks it was signed, I get a call from Forbes. And I was like, they have the wrong person here. Why are they calling me, right? What would Forbes want, And they said, we would like to recognize you. You are the only elected official in the entire country we've ever put on any of our Future 50 work. And what we know is that because California passed this law, it is going to change the future of workers in our country. Because California's market, California's market is so big. And so I go, to New York, and I'm sitting there, and I was like, ooh, I think you all opposed it. I'm sitting with some CEOs. But years later now, it is part of the law, and I'm just so grateful that it was something that we were able to do. But also, I did it from the lens of, look, I just want folks to be empowered to apply to jobs, and I see disproportionately that women continue to be impacted by the, mystery or lack of salary that was listed.
Amazing work. I love it. Thank you. Welcome, Mindy Budgore. Yes. So, Mindy, there's nothing you can't do. You're an entrepreneur, an author, and truly a barrier breaker, redefining leadership and cultural narratives. While an undergrad at the University of Wisconsin, she launched her first company before earning an MBA from the University of Chicago. Then at 27, you traveled to Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve to do humanitarian work. And she worked to become the first female Maasai warrior, challenging generations of tradition. She chronicled her journey in a book called Warrior Princess: My Quest to Become the First Female Maasai Warrior, sparking global conversations on gender, resilience, and cultural boundaries. Now Mindy leads an AI-enabled company she founded called Nines. It empowers women and their self-perception, demonstrating how technology can become a tool for changing deeply ingrained narratives. Wow. Okay, Mindy, throughout history, women have been told to shrink. Has anyone felt that? Yeah. Physically, under the weight of unrealistic beauty standards, and verbally, for fear of being labeled too loud, you're too opinionated, you're too much. Has anyone ever heard that? I bet. Mm-hmm. You face judgment for simply existing in your body, from society, but also from those close to you. How have you reclaimed your right to take up space? And how will your AI initiative, Nines, amplify that empowerment on a much broader scale?
Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much. This is an honor, a total honor to be here. So, yes, you're absolutely right that women have been told for way too long that, and let me add the narrative of you're not good enough. And so I've definitely had enough of that. It's ridiculous, and it's just simply not true. So I have a bit of a track record of breaking some barriers, and if it's hockey and the Masai Mara, and quite frankly, every single day is a push, and I think I'm seeing head nods. Everyone feels the same, and so Nines is actually really built with the purpose of helping people step into and claim their confidence. And we're starting with something as simple but incredibly powerful, which is deciding what to wear and what to buy. Over 80% of women on a daily basis don't feel good about what they put on their body. And it's not because you don't know how to style yourself or you don't have the right items in your closet. It's that process is overwhelming, and so Nines is your closet confidant and your style expert and bestie that you can say to Nina, who's the AI stylist, that, you know what, I'm not super pumped about facing today. And I've got a big presentation and not really sure what to do. And she's like, number one, we're gonna crush it. And number two, the last time you felt this way, you wore pink. And so she's remembered that, and Nina can also be a different version. It's not just a woman, but basically this is the point of Nines, is that it helps you claim your uniqueness and empowers you to show up as your best self, because that's really what everybody wants to do at the end of the day. And because also when you show up as your best self, you're not just like taking space, you're owning it. So that's nice.
Thank you, Mindy.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, Captain Kelleher, before we get to you, I want to share a key part of our work which actually led us to you, and it was early January and the LA fires.
In January 2025, wildfires tore through Los Angeles County, forcing more than 200,000 people to evacuate. These catastrophic fires killed at least 29 people and destroyed more than 18,000 homes and structures. The Palisades and Eaton fires rank among the most destructive in California's history. Thousands of people remain without a home and the essentials needed to survive. In the wake of this unprecedented loss, entire communities now face the daunting challenge of rebuilding from the ashes.
I would never in a million years have expected to be a disaster victim, but now I am, and I really feel for people who have experienced that and who have lost everything. I now know what the worst day in one's life can actually be like, and I gotta say, and it's hard to talk straight about it, that the best thing about all of this is seeing people come together and helping each other.
Hello, I'm Carrie Murray, president of ShelterBox USA, and I'm here in Altadena, California, in LA County, where tens of thousands of people lost their homes here from the Eaton fire. Today, we are at the Grocery Outlet Bargain Market, the parking lot here, which is a staging facility where hundreds of families have lined up to come get emergency relief. Just the basics. So many people, thousands displaced by these fires, need the essentials. Thanks to your generous support, our ShelterBox teams, in partnership with Rotary Districts 5280 and 5300, and with the help from Amazon Disaster, ShelterBox has mobilized to deliver life-saving emergency supplies. Every item is a vital step toward restoring hope. From hundreds of Luminade solar lights that can charge cell phones, to high thermal blankets and comforters, hand warmers, pillows, towels, to cook sets and dinnerware, ShelterBox is working to help support displaced families on their long road to recovery. In wildfire-ravaged Los Angeles, countless families are struggling to find safety and rebuild their lives. Your support makes it possible for us to deliver vital relief and hope in these darkest hours. ShelterBox USA remains on the ground, committed to standing with our communities as they recover. Across wildfire-ravaged Los Angeles, as families cling to hope amid unimaginable loss, your support delivers a lifeline. Thank you for standing with us as we rebuild lives and restore hope.
So when that video was on the end, I saw you were spending the day with us. We're going to get to you, Trinity, but thank you for your service. Captain Kelleher was at the center of gravity for the county after the fires. She is a trailblazing fire service leader. She's dedicated to public safety, mentorship, community engagement. She joined the LA County Fire Department in 2000, and she's risen through the ranks from firefighter to paramedic to fire captain. She is the first female public information officer for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And in January, she was the one that was delivering vital updates as the Eaton and Palisades fires devastated the county. You stayed up around the clock to deliver the critical messaging about road closures, evacuations, and more. You've been a passionate advocate for diversity in the fire service. I know you mentor many future firefighters through the Women's Fire Prep Academy, the Girls Fire Camp, and the Explorer program. She's also an exceptional athlete. She's a bodybuilder, and she won the world championship in the long drive championship competition. Yes. We're going to talk about it a little later, but pound per pound, she could outdrive the male winner of the competition.
Bring your checkbooks.
Yeah. And that was before newer technology boosted distances, right? So amazing. Maybe most astounding, Sheila gave birth to her twins, and they're here at almost 47 years old. And they're sitting in the front row. And there's your husband. Yes. So, Captain Kelleher, you were raised in a world of strong influences. And from an early age, you never hesitated to chase your passion. Whether as an athlete, paramedic, or fire captain, you didn't wait for permission. You knew you belonged. But in a society that constantly reminds women of the barriers in their way, what shaped your unshakable confidence?
What a great question. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the stage and with all you people. I really appreciate it. You kind of alluded to it. I was raised in a home with all brothers, and I had 3 brothers, and they had their best friends. So our house always had a full 6+ boys, stinky boys in my house. And we were feral. We were straight feral children. I grew up in the 70s. No one knew where we were at as long as we came home before the lights went out. But with that said, I loved sports, and I loved playing and participating. And because there was nothing else to do back in the 70s, there was no Nintendo Switch. Otherwise, my life would have turned out maybe different. But I loved playing and competing with my brothers, and I was good at it. I was a great athlete, and that was from keeping up with them. And I always believed if they could do it, I could do it. And nobody told me otherwise because the proof was in the pudding, because when you are younger and you're going toe-to-toe, girls keep up with boys until puberty hits. I see it. I watched it with my twins. I watched it with my nieces and nephews. And the beatdowns were severe on both sides. And if you went crying, mom would be like, get back out there. Like, I don't have time for you. I've got lots of laundry to do and whatnot. So I love to compete. I played by a different set of rules, as I think why. I was not given the rule book of what little girls needed to be or look like. And I'm grateful for that. Sometimes I felt so unfairly treated because I knew there was a part of me that was missing in that complete, and I'd find it later. But what it did do was set me up to walk into a life where, since I was able to follow the rules and play by the rules that the men set down, I was able to do that in the fire service. And I was able to do that without any hesitation or question. All brand new firefighters got treated like shit. And I had no problem because I'd already been through that for my whole life with my family. I was good at it. I was like, oh, that's all you got? You guys haven't scratched the surface. So I think they respected that, and they're like grateful. Like, so every time I played the rules in the game right and came back up and met them toe to toe, and besides I knew my job, I came in extra hard. I did all the things that I did. But once you play the game right, I could see how the rules needed to be changed. And because they respected me, they allowed those rules to be changed. Now, day one, I saw that rule was jacked up in the first place, but I couldn't say anything day one. I had to wait until I earned the respect, and they saw where I was coming from. So, and a quick thing that Paul reminded me of is the difference between boys and girls. So we would be in a heated battle, and my brother and I would get into a brutal fight, just WWE, legitimately mad at each other and beat the heck out of each other, and doors slamming. We go into our separate rooms. 4 minutes later, 8 minutes later, Sheila, we're playing football at the church parking lot. You coming? We're like, oh yeah, let's go. Like, we held on to nothing because that's just the way I was socialized. Like, we didn't hold on to hurt feelings. We got over it quick. And if you didn't, they said, build a bridge, get over it, and let's keep moving. And I think that set me up to never be questioned. It's just like, I got this. But I think I got a different set of rules than a lot of girls got. And if we can swap rule books and give the guys ours and give the girls theirs for a little while, I think we get this beautiful balance in between.
Sheila, if you don't mind, I would like for us to see Sheila quickly in action so you can see what she does every day.
I'm in 2000, and I believe I was the 15th female in the history of LA County. So it was very few women on the job at that time. Let's go, let's go. You gotta go back and check to make sure nothing's got behind you. Got into the game a little bit later than most, so I went through the academy at 36, almost 37. I showed up that first day to take my physical agilities test. I remember walking out there, and I was the only girl on the grinder at that time. Walked in the classroom, and it had all the women that were sitting there taking all the entry paperwork in, and I remember seeing them, and they looked at me, and they were like, a girl? And so they gave me a thumbs up. And then I sat down and looked, and I was like, here we go. This is gonna be awesome. Life's for the warriors. Come on, you guys, cheer your buddy on. Let's go. Keep fired up. Over the last 7, 8, 9 years, there has been a pretty big growth of women on the job. This is how it's gonna roll. You can push this, you can level up. If you're that fit, you can level up, and you know how to do that. It's not lost on me, though, that sometimes little girls look up and go, I could do that. So that's cool. That's cool for anybody to inspire younger generation to be what they want to be.
And Sheila and I had connected on some other things as well in our conversation. So part of what has drawn me to this work and helping lift and empower women was almost losing a child in childbirth and having a really tough time. She was $1 million baby. By the time she got out of the hospital, those were the bills. She was never supposed to make it. And Sheila has shared with me, obviously she was raised by men. And Sheila, if you wouldn't, would you mind sharing your story?
Yeah, back when horses ran the streets, and that's how we got around, that's how old I am. My dad, good old Irish Catholic, and my brother Kevin, my brother Patrick, myself, and then my brother Michael was born 12 months to the day after me. So we had Irish quadruplets in the house. But my mom was in the hospital after pregnancy, and she had some minor complications. And my dad went into the room to, see how she was doing, and a blood clot went off in her leg, and it went to her lung, and it killed her instantly. So, which is crazy, so long ago we've talked about it a lot, but that left my dad with 3 basically 5 and under. And this was back in 1964. And we were in Las Vegas at the time, and his family, he was an only child, but they were in Boston, and there wasn't that kind of travel. So there he was with, and he knew 2 things about raising kids, jack and shit, right? So he had no idea what he was doing. He was in the Air Force, so he hung around with a bunch of pilots. So it was a rough go for us, and super grateful and lucky. But that was, in the United States, that was a simple compression garment back then is what probably would have stopped that. That was a test for anticoagulants. So you think about how far we've come in our country, but how many people out there where my husband is from Ghana. The simplest things like that, their mortality rate is incredibly high, and it shouldn't be. So it touches me because, you think about all the things that coulda, shoulda, woulda, but, so it's dear to my heart because it has affected so many families.
Thank you, Sheila. Trinity, I'm so excited to talk to you, Trinity. Trinity was born in a tough part of Stockton. Trinity's mother was a single parent from Vietnam, and she also has a brother, and they lived under the poverty line, and her mother often collected welfare. Trinity developed a deep sense of duty to help people suffering from economic difficulties, and now Trinity is co-founder of the California Public Banking Alliance and the Public Bank of Los Angeles. She spearheaded landmark legislation, including the California Public Banking Act and the Cal Account, expanding financial access for marginalized communities, including single parents. As executive director of Urban Partners LA, she led the delivery of over 250,000 grocery boxes to low-income families. She's been honored as Woman of the Year by the California Legislature, is a 2024 Roddenberry Fellow, and a nominee for the LA Times Inspirational Women Leadership Awards. Trinity, as co-founder and lead organizer of the California Public Banking Alliance and Public Bank LA, you spearheaded the coalition behind the passage of the California Public Banking Act, which is the first bill in the nation enabling municipalities to form public banks. You fought to restructure the financial system to better serve our communities. Can you share your passion behind this mission, why it's so important, particularly to women and those from marginalized communities, and how civic leadership can work to solve complex problems?
I'll take a moment just to acknowledge my bio, because I typically don't divulge much of my personal life. I dive right into my work, but I think being raised in a low-income household made me keenly aware at a very young age about economic disparities, and it really ignited seeing poverty firsthand, seeing a single mother struggle, really ignited a passion in me to figure out the root causes of poverty and inequality, and figuring out how can we control the levers of power so that we can level the playing field for everyone. And that really laid the foundation for me to be laser focused on my work over the past several years, focused on taking on Wall Street, one of the most powerful industries on the planet with very little funding. And I also want to take a moment just to acknowledge the indigenous movement that inspired the public banking movement. 2016 Standing Rock, indigenous groups in North Dakota were fighting against oil companies that were encroaching on their sacred land, that were poisoning their water supply. So out of the conversations in the reservation came a very, very important idea that you can't fund pipelines, but you can't build pipelines without funding. And so the aim was to cut ties from the banks that were financing pipelines. And that resonated with me. That was a moment of clarity and a realization that if we want to create systemic change, we have to redirect the flow of money. And so our goal was to take control of the money supply. So we took the inspiration from Standing Rock, came back to in Los Angeles. We led a divestment movement to take on Wells Fargo Bank, one of the most powerful banks in the country, one of the banks financing the Dakota Access Pipeline. We pushed the city to move their money towards socially responsible banks, but in a city the size of LA, there are no, if you move it from one big bank, it would just move to another big bank. So the only true form of divestment was to essentially divest from Wall Street altogether and create a public bank, a bank that is owned by the people, that is accountable to our communities, that's 100% transparent. We led a ballot measure in Los Angeles, gained 430,000 votes to move forward with a public bank. It didn't win, but we knew we planted a seed. A few months later, we introduced legislation in the state. We wrote and backed legislation that created a legal framework for cities all across the state to be able to form their own banks. And in 2019, just a few months before the pandemic hit, Governor Newsom signed the California Public Banking Act into law. The state finalized regulations in 2022, so we've been working with local governments across the state to form public banks that leverage our public funds. So right now, cities like Los Angeles spend about $1.4 billion every year on banking fees, on interest, on debt service. And that's money that gets siphoned out of our community. So you can imagine the possibilities. If you keep that money, if we recapture those funds and recirculate it in our communities to build homes and to build schools and to build parks and to modernize our infrastructure and to support small businesses, especially businesses owned by women that often lack access to affordable credit. So there's an incredible world out there, an incredible future that is possible if we just redirect the flow of money back into our communities. So we're working with 5 local governments across the state right now to get these banks off the ground. And just so I want to quickly pivot to Cal Account. That's a bill that we passed in 2021. We're moving into the second phase. We're about to introduce legislation in a few weeks. That will create a zero cost, zero fee, zero penalty checking account with debit card access that all Californians can opt into. And why is this important? Because there's about 8 million folks in California right now who don't have access and get gouged by predatory financial services. And that's especially important for women and working families. SEIU California is one of our lead sponsors on that. They're the largest labor union in California. 750,000 workers who are primarily women, child care workers, healthcare workers, janitors, fast food workers. They've testified about having to walk for 4 hours, taking the bus for 2 hours just to get 10% taken out of a $100 paycheck. So this is about creating a medium of exchange that doesn't exploit people, that doesn't penalize people for not having enough money in their bank account. And I'll just say quickly that once that legislation is passed, hopefully this year, it will be the nation's first universal banking services program.
Whoa. Amazing, Trinity. And Trinity, we talked about this. What was your budget to do this?
Our budget to do...
when you got started.
You want me to tell the story
Yes.
about okay, so I'll tell the story. So years ago, I went to a conference in New Mexico and talked about the importance of creating public banking legislation. And one of the finance experts in the room said, well, how much money do you all have to lead this initiative? And I answered, $0 and 0 cents. And everyone laughed. You know, we were confident, but there's no way that we're going to pass something of this magnitude with no resources. And a year later, we took on 9 financial lobby firms to pass this bill, and then passed our second bill to move the conversation and shift the future of finance.
Amazing.
So anything is possible.
Awesome work. So, wow. I told you these women are trailblazers. We're going to keep peeling back the layers here, and I'm going to ask you each one more question, and then we'll do a Q&A. But Senator Limón, with your extensive background in education and community involvement, being here in Santa Barbara, you're from Santa Barbara, including your tenure at Santa Barbara Unified School and your work with the McNair Scholars Program at UCSB. What strategies do you believe are most effective in empowering young women to pursue leadership roles? And how do you feel that communities can support these initiatives to foster the next generation of female leaders like you?
Well, before I got into public office, and I had no intention. I mean, this was not what I thought I would do in my life. I spent 14 years working with students and families here in the community. I spent 14 years working at the community college at UC Santa Barbara, and I worked with many students and families across the spectrum in our area, but also across, when I say across the spectrum, not just at different backgrounds, but also different ages. And one of the things that I know to be true in my experience working directly with families and students is that what we instill in both, girls and boys at a young age, it is really, really critical because that is what they carry with them. So I think that when it comes to leadership, we teach leadership early on. When it comes to ensuring that people, know what opportunities they have, those opportunities should begin at a very early age. And I think that for individuals, whether you are young, whether you are older, seeing a reflection of a possibility is also really key. To introduce an opportunity that doesn't have a mirror where someone sees that they can potentially be there is difficult. But to show that women do serve and lead in every single space, that women are leaders, formal leaders, informal leaders, that women have the opportunity to do all these things is really important. So I spent 14 years prior to elected office doing that, creating programs, creating mentorship programs, academic programs, co-curricular support programs for students. And one thing that's really special, I think, when you think about families and what that does is when you do something that helps women, it helps families. And when you do something that helps families, it helps everybody. And that is also key. I think sometimes we talk about what are the best practices for young girls. How do we get girls into STEMs? But it turns out that what's good for them is good for everybody else, and vice versa, right? Those are things that have been, I believe, very, very critical. And the community does this. You don't only do it in an academic setting. If we believe that inspiration, that leadership, that vision comes from just a classroom wall, I think we've limited ourselves to also understanding what our role can be as community members to support our families, to support our students. They are going to be here. They will be the leaders of our communities. And so we all play a role in those investments. I feel lucky that I'm someone who was born and raised in this community and now have the honor of representing the community. But I'm also someone who was part of a community that made a lot of investments, right, in my own upbringing, in my education. I think of the fact that I picked up my first instrument at a public school. I think of the fact that I'm a recipient of our local scholarship foundation. All of these investments yield outcomes for our students, but in particular for our girls.
Oh, thank you. Amazing. Enormously important work. Yes. So, Mindy, your book, Warrior Princess, My Quest to Become the First Female Maasai Warrior. If you haven't read this book, you can get it on Amazon. It is laugh out loud funny. It's hard to get like full belly laugh out of me when I'm reading, and there's many moments in this. I love it. It's very honest. So the Maasai chief told you that women are not strong enough, they're not brave enough to become a warrior. And you said, I of course thought this was ridiculous. But what sealed the deal for Mindy was when a Maasai woman told her that women in her tribe had been trying to become warriors for generations. Mindy thought if for some reason I was given an opportunity to break this barrier for women, I should take it. And so I did. So, Mindy, you didn't just take the opportunity, you shattered a centuries-old barrier, proving strength isn't defined by gender. Training alongside the Maasai warriors pushed you beyond your physical, mental, and cultural limits. Was there ever a moment when you questioned whether you could keep going? And what was the most defining moment in your journey where you realized you weren't just participating, but truly belonging? And what lessons from that do you think every woman can carry in their own fight for equality and empowerment?
So there were many moments when I didn't think I was going to make it. And not making it all meant I was likely not going to survive. And I'm looking at my mother right now, and I can see her like just cringing and freaking out. But that's the truth, and it did. The experience, absolutely, it pushed me physically, it pushed culturally, as you said, and for sure mentally. But it actually wasn't the endurance physically that was the biggest test. It was, I had put my own limitation on myself, which was not believing that I belonged. And there was a moment, like one of the defining moments for me was we were doing spear training, because that's what we do in the bush. And I wasn't good. Like, let me just be clear. Like, I was living with 7 warriors, and all eyes are on me and the form and me not throwing the spear very well. And one of the warriors named Lynette, he pulled me aside and was giving me tips on how to shift my form. And that was the moment when I thought, he's already accepted me. The person who hasn't accepted me is me. And so and I used that energy to like, that just unlocked so much for me. And so I guess, like, the biggest lesson out of that is it's not just about breaking barriers. It is breaking barriers and keeping a door open, and holding a hand for others. And so that's where I see, like, everyone being able to, us being able to lift each other up. And again, that I would say is, like, the biggest learning lesson for me.
How long were you out there? And is it really you eat what you kill?
Yes. Yes. So we're out there for about 3.5 months or so, and you're sleeping on the leaves and eating what you can kill and learning how to protect your community. And so it was. They did not think that I was going to stay. Or, by the way, like, there was definitely a time where, all right, I'm giving her maybe a few hours, she's going to turn around and go back to, the Hilton, right? And but then stayed a day, stayed a week, and I felt honored to be there and accepted, and but it definitely took. You had to put in your time, right? And so, yeah.
Well, read this book. It's amazing. Okay, we're going to get back to the World Championship of Golf now. So in 2007, Captain Kelleher won the World Championship for the longest drive in the women's competition. Pound for pound, you outdrove the male champion, who weighed more than double she did. The gentleman who won the longest drive competition received the prize money of $250,000. Captain Kelleher received $14,000.
Wah, wah, wah.
But truly, I mean, that kind of disparity is a reality that many women face across industries, whether it's sports or firefighting or entertainment, music, every industry. But how has that moment shaped your drive to mentor young women through initiatives like the Girls Fire Camp and the World's Fire Prep Academy? And what do you tell them about pushing through barriers that still exist today?
Yeah, I told them they should get the senator's bill in there a lot faster. So I could have got that paycheck. Man, that's a tough one because, it was 2007. It wasn't until 2019 where the U.S. women did legal action and everything like that to get equal pay, and has really led the way. And what I do know is that when women get together and women organize, there's nothing women cannot accomplish, and I'm blown away by that. I always tell people that I go to war, and I went to war like you're your Maasai. You would learn to be a first responder for the Maasai warriors, is what you were doing. That's exactly what you were doing. You were a boot, dude. They accepted you. I can't wait to hear the rest of that story. But it's true. But what I tell a lot of people is that, I fought many wars with the men in my life. we go to battle every day, fighting fires, saving lives, and doing the things that we did. So those are the battles I fought with the men in my life. But the wars were won by the women that showed up in my life. And I've had some incredible sisters that I never was given at birth, but that I've made along the way. And I know they've made me a stronger person. And I feel incumbent, and it's my duty and my honor to speak for the sisters that can't speak for themselves. That's in Los Angeles, in the underserved communities. That's across the countries, and when I go to Ghana, and other places in the world, because speaking up and asking for equality means their life. So when people said, Sheila, you got it good, why are you talking all this? And I'm like, listen, it's my job, because they can't speak for themselves, and I can. I've got the luxury to tell you what you need to do. And I think it's really important, and to allude to what Carrie was talking about, after about 8 or 9 years on the job, when I'd earned the respect and people understood I played by the rules and I wasn't trying to get, anything special treatment, it's like, we need to expose this job to more women, because firefighting is one of those jobs that is equal pay. We get the same benefits, we get the same retirement. It's an incredible job when it comes to our financial benefits. And even if I could expose just 6 girls to that, and then their communities get raised, because when women do well, the whole community does well. We know that. It's empirically proven all over. So starting a girls' camp, we did that. And we just finished our 10th year. We started 10 years ago. And we've probably put in 10 years, 3,000 girls through that girls' camp. And then, which is huge. Just even if they don't want to be a firefighter, they have seen all the women that show up to help support, and the men that show up and help with us and help mentor these young girls, to let them know there's other options. You don't have to settle for a job that doesn't have a tag on it, and you can get a great paying gig. And you can be a support unit to the fire service as well. And then from there, we realized that since women didn't get the playbook I got growing up, they didn't get one, that there were a lot of women that wanted to be firefighters, but they didn't know the rules. So we created the first, across the country, Women's Fire Prep Academy. It's free. It's 6 weekends. We donate our time. The department supports us. The Board of Supervisors for Los Angeles County think it's the best thing we've ever done. And we fought tooth and nail for those first 2. And everybody gave us so much you-know-what about doing it. It's like, what are y'all doing? And we begged, borrowed, and stealed equipment. And through fundraising and amazing people who really believed in us, we have enough equipment now to outfit over 120 people that come up, recruits that come and do a thing. And we're in the middle of one right now. So Saturday, I'll be at the Women's Fire Prep Academy yelling at these girls, letting them know, is that all you got? You better get back in there. That's my job. Like, don't even. Because, and one last thing I just want to say is, I think we get, people think DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a dirty word. And I'm like, this is what I taught my children when they were in kindergarten. Use all the crayons in the coloring box. Include your buddies. Everybody gets to come have snack with us, and don't leave anybody out if they want to join. And so they think it's a front of the line pass, when all it is an equal opportunity to compete. That's all we need. And then when you do get that opportunity, don't blow it. That Eminem moment, you better own it, you know it, So it's like, you gotta be able to compete, so you have to show up and be ready to perform. And that's what we tell these girls. It's like, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And you're gonna earn your spot, you're never gonna look back, and you're not gonna doubt yourself that you belong, because you've taken every step, and God knows you've probably taken about 10 more.
Trinity. So as the executive director of Urban Partners Los Angeles, you ran California's largest walk-up food bank during COVID, helping people in need. This was the longest food bank line in California, and people lined up at midnight for when the doors opened at 7, leading a major food bank to fighting for public banking. You've done it all. How have you seen women leading change in these spaces, and what unique strengths do women bring to community-driven movements?
Well, I'll just say, between food banking and public banking, my life has really been 360 degrees of banking, and in a way, it made poetic sense, because it's about redirecting resources to where it's needed most. So And from 2020 to 2024, I led the emergency food distribution operations of a food bank in Koreatown, Los Angeles, and that was built from the grassroots. At the start of the pandemic, I stepped in to scale up a small neighborhood food bank and tripled the size, the inventory, the operations, the hours, the volunteer base. And what we were seeing during the pandemic at the beginning was that already strained and fragile economic conditions were further exacerbated. And at the front lines of all crises, those who are hardest hit are always the elderly and the working class and those who are struggling at the edge of poverty. And so what we built was a lifeline for thousands of women, working mothers, single mothers, and grandmothers. And that came at such a critical time in the face of systemic failure as jobs were lost and hours reduced, the supply chain, the food shortages were getting hit, and the overall social safety net started to shatter. We immediately mobilized the community, went into our activist network, mobilized hundreds of volunteers to feed the people. And as Carrie shared, at 7 a.m., we had people who had been waiting in line at midnight. So for 7 hours, people were waiting in line, and you had seniors waiting in line for what essentially was a box of leftover food, which is, you know, a tragic indictment of our system, where we have people waiting in line for hours for a basic necessity. But the community that we built was so incredible. We had, at the height of our operations, we had over 100 volunteers working in multiple shifts, distributing boxes of groceries for 8 hours, sometimes more, to thousands of people in line, which served thousands more waiting at home for food. And when the operations wrapped, emergency operations wrapped in 2024, we had distributed over 80,000 boxes of groceries to community members. And this was an incredible group of people, women warriors who woke up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday with us to be at the front lines to feed our people. And what that showed, this experience showed, was really the strength and the courage and the resilience of people coming together to solve complex problems. Because at the end of the day, food is a human right, and also food banks are a reminder that this is a broken system, that we shouldn't have so many people vulnerable to unable to access basic needs. But the beauty of the community coming together to solve a problem like food insecurity was just so inspiring. And you know, similarly, we've seen what's unfolded over the last several months following the LA wildfires. I was with Carrie and Paul and the ShelterBox team in Altadena, handing out essential household items to hundreds of family members who had lost everything in the wildfires. And so, you know, moments of crisis is the time to be bold. I think moments of crisis really push us to channel that intense energy into something constructive, and to figure out how to control that chaos so it doesn't consume us. And that's something I've shared similarly to a lot of my colleagues right now as we're trying to figure out how to respond to the current administration, is you can't roll up your sleeves and wring your hands at the same time. So my message to women is embrace that chaos. And in that chaos, we not only survive, we rebuild.
Yeah. That's great.
You'd be great in disaster relief, I'll tell you that. We want to take some questions. So I know that there is a microphone out there. Paul has it. Are there any questions out there? Larissa, in the front row. Here.
Thank you, Paul. That was fast. So this question speaks to what Trinity was just talking about, rebuilding in the chaos, but it's actually for Monique. And I really want to talk about how we can rebuild our democracy at the moment where it seems to be crumbling. And when we think about electing women to office, to leadership positions, part of it is reshaping our perception, but part of it is reshaping the system that we elect people to. How can we change the electoral process to allow more women to get elected?
Well, I have a lot to say about that part. But, you know, when I think about this, I actually think about some work. Since last year, I've been trying to run a bill related to civic education because I think that there is an assumption that people understand what democracy we're talking about. And what I have learned is that folks don't always understand what is at stake for a number of reasons. One, because the system we have hasn't worked for them. Because the system we have is not one they're connected to, or the system we have is not one that they believe in, or the system we have is so broken they don't recognize it. And I think I'm an educator at heart. That's where I come from. So of course I was like, you know, we don't really teach civics. Like, it went away a long time ago because we thought there were bigger and better things that needed to be taught. And in a moment in time where I think our democracy is very vulnerable, and I really truly believe that inclusivity in our democracy is key. Whether you are, you know, someone who believes in what we have, someone who believes in reform, it also has to start from, you know, from early on. It doesn't mean that there's not points where people can engage in the electoral process, in the, you know, in these roles, but people and students and folks in our communities, our society needs to embrace it, I think, at a very young age. So it's a legislative, you know, work that I've been doing, but I also think that, you know, we chatted about how there's still so many firsts. I am the first person of color to ever hold this seat from this area. And I share that because there's assumptions that the system that we're trying to protect and survive has worked at all times and for everyone, and it hasn't, right? And so there is reason to also look at how we all can engage. In this moment, my piece of advice to everyone is that everyone should look for that one thing that they can do, that one thing that they believe in, whether it is a direct investment to the community or whether it's saying, hey, I'm going and I'm starting at the top and I want reform at the national level. There are many political reforms that we can do. The list will go on, you know, related to campaign financing, to, you know, allowing a lot of folks to be able to do it. I'm also only the second woman in history to have a child while in the Senate. In the California Senate. And everyone thinks California is like super blue. So I have a lot to say about what the barriers look like for women to be involved. I chatted with a few of you, and we, you know, earlier about the mom hustle. You know what? You have a mom hustle no matter what your job is, no matter what you do. And that is, I think, very real. So there are systemic changes we have, I think we need to do. Yes, there is campaign, you know, reform itself, there's finance, there's term limits, but there are also a lot of different ways that we can help people believe and see that leadership is not just elected office. Leadership is leading movements. Leadership is being, you know, the first. Leadership is in so many different ways really key to changing this. From my perspective, you know, elections matter. There are consequences to elections, but we have an election coming up in 18 months because that's when the primaries are going to start in this country. And so people have got to believe that a system works. And if you believe that the system works, you want to make it better, you're going to then, I think, exercise your right. We had a lot of people who stayed out, who said, this is a system that doesn't work for me. I don't want to get involved. I'm not going to vote. We need people to believe that it's worth it for their voice to be heard and that their voice matters. But in particular, I think women. So.
Any other questions? Oh, Candy, in the front row. Oh, I see her. Okay, let's Candy project because your hand was up. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because public banking is more relevant and urgent now more than ever, because what we're seeing with the current administration in New York City, the Trump Elon Musk regime just seized $80 million in congressionally approved FEMA funds based on a false premise that those funds were being used to house people in luxury hotels. So, and then on the environmental level, $20 billion that was already approved by the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the Inflation Reduction Act, GGRF funds, that was supposed to be distributed to community groups across, and CDFIs across the nation to help with climate mitigation and environmental and sustainable infrastructure and projects. And that is at threat right now from being clawed back by the administration. So our communities are a threat, potentially with federal overreach and clawing back federal resources, as well as our environment. So now more than ever, it's important for cities and states, especially blue cities, especially sanctuary cities, to build a tool at the local level so that they can leverage their own resources to meet the needs of the communities. Big banks don't have an incentive to take our economy to net zero carbon. So we need to be able to build solutions at the local level. The difference between big banks and private banks is that a public bank can do the same thing, which is leverage funding. So the power of a public bank is $1 in a public bank can be leveraged up to $10 in lending. $1 million can be leveraged up to $10 million. But the difference between a public bank and private bank is that private banks leverage funds through fractional reserve lending. They leverage funds towards areas that generate the shortest amount of profit. So we're talking fossil fuels and immigrant detention centers and private prisons and weapons manufacturers. With the public bank, the mission and the mandate of the bank is to directly serve the needs of the community. So you're leveraging to build homes and to build schools and to build parks and to support small businesses and to support infrastructure and green energy and sustainable infrastructure. So it is a common sense and logical solution to give our cities the tool to leverage their own assets to fund community needs. So in California, we're working with 5 local governments: Los Angeles, San Francisco, the Central Coast, East Bay, which is creating a regional bank, and Sacramento. Currently, there's 5 local governments at various stages, from either creating their feasibility study or finalizing their business plans and moving towards implementation and capitalization strategy for the banks. So there's real concrete resources from across the state for an idea that virtually no one knew about years ago. So because it really is, again, common sense for cities to save money and to be able to bring in revenue to fund its needs, especially right now when we're faced with budget deficits across the state. Los Angeles is about a $400 million deficit on top of wildfire recovery. So as we're facing federal threats, as we're facing an escalating climate emergency, we need to be able to build tools for local resiliency. And we're hoping that what's happening at the federal level is going to encourage legislators to be bold and take that steps towards getting these public banks off the ground in the next few years.
Awesome. Amazing. Sierra, thank you, Trinity.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by all of your stories. This question is for anyone who would like to answer, but I'm curious how mentorship has impacted your career and any advice that you have for women seeking mentorship.
I'll answer that real quick. I didn't have a mentor coming up in the fire service, and I could have used one along the way because I really ran into a few walls trying to figure things out. With that said, I think I jumped at the chance to be a mentor because I knew how valuable it would be. And as soon as you get the cheat code, you want to share it with your buddies. And that's how I felt. So being a mentor has impacted my life because I've seen the direct outcome in doing the Women's Fire Prep Academy over the last 9 years. I've been out on a fire and I've had a captain come up to me and say, hey, your girl right there, she went through your academy and she's one of our best firefighters. So I've heard that on multiple occasions, and I've had people track me down saying, you don't understand, my life completely changed. I was only at the academy 2 weeks or whatever it was. But I think that's really important. And I think if you are a young person that's trying to get into whatever field you're getting into, find somebody that's doing the job that you want and track them down and ask, because they want to share. They want to make sure you don't hit the roadblocks they hit, and then you can get there a little bit faster, and then you can make it better for the rest of us. So don't be afraid to ask, reach out, reach up, and be, a stalker. I've had many people stalk me, and I have, and I appreciate every single one of them. I'm like, damn, you're persistent. But I love it. They've got fire and they want to do it, and it really, really helps. So, and if you are starting something new, be flexible. Learn the art of anticipation. Anticipate what your coworker needs, what your community needs, and be ready with the tools, because the firefighter that's got the right tool at the right job is a superhero out in the field. So learn that art of anticipation and be like water. Flow around it. Don't let anything stop you, because there might be barriers, but you can flow right around them.
I love that. Can I add one thing?
Oh, please, Mindy.
So I have been a stalker, okay? And actually I've always looked for a mentor. And it is absolutely the most important thing that I would say is you have to ask, though. You have to take the initiative, and don't be afraid. And you're right that I've heard from a number of mentors that they learn and they value from the experience working with a mentee. And so do it, take it seriously, and absolutely go to the top. And I still do it every single day. Like, I'm constantly looking for what's the group that is, where's my, and it starts also with you realizing and taking some awareness, like, where do you want to grow? And then seeking out the people that you think are going to be able to help boost you.
Love it. And sometimes it's finding mentors in the moments like these. So we're going to get back to one final quick question for all of you before we say goodbye. But we're going to do something very special this year. And this is the 25th anniversary of ShelterBox this year. I'm also happy to report that we learned last month that ShelterBox was now nominated for the third time in 2025 for the Nobel Peace Prize.
How cool is that?
Yes. And that is for our work really in the world's worst conflict zones, which is some of the work I feel is our best work, particularly our work with women in conflict zones. So, fingers crossed. So, in honor of our 25th anniversary this year of our humanitarian work, we have made a decision to begin giving an award at this event. And it is called our Warrior Award. And I'm going to ask Belle and Lily to come up here and help me with this award. And the person who is going to be recognized with the 2025 Warrior Award is a true warrior. And when many people are running from devastation and running from violence and running from uncertainty, running away from it, this person is running towards it. And they're running towards it fearlessly with a great sense of resilience and courage to protect all of us. So, Lily and Belle, would you mind doing the honor of recognizing one of our panelists?
Our pleasure. It is with deep and great honor and being so inspired by all of you that this award goes to Captain Sheila.
Thank you. I love what I do, and it's hard to get applause because that's not what I'm used to, but I really, really appreciate it. I will treasure this. Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you ladies.
Such warriors.
You get to go. outside of my chest right there.
So amazing. I'm so grateful to all of you. I know we went over. I think it was important. There's so many layers to these women and the stories that you have to share. So we're grateful. To close out, let's leave the audience with a challenge in 30 seconds or less. What is one piece of advice or one action, big or small, that every person in this room can take to inspire change, empower women, and help break the barriers for the next generation?
Go first. I'll go back to my $0 and 0 cents story. Don't be afraid of not having enough resources or not having enough funding. It really comes down to how hard you fight and how deeply you believe in your mission. I see my work not as work, but as a sacred mission and a duty to humanity. And I encourage everyone to see their work the same way because, I mean, in addition to strategy and leveraging resources, you will be surprised at the things that you can manifest with pure intention. So to the women in this room and to anyone who may be listening, maybe in the future, is that don't be afraid and trust your intuition, embrace resilience, don't wait for permission to start or the right conditions to start because the world needs your courage, your conviction, and your unwavering belief that another way is possible.
Very good. I would say keep showing up. I say yes, and I say yes to a lot of things. I say yes to a lot of people, and keep showing up. And I rarely ask permission. I've gotten away with it.
So find your passion, continue to turn over every freaking stone, and don't give up, and just freaking go.
And I would say understand that every single person has a role to play. No one does it alone. We do it together, and no job is too big, no job is too small. We each have a role in making whatever it is that we want, our system, our democracy, our jobs, our workplace, a bank, whatever, we each have a role in making that and believe in that role.
So true, so true.
I'm going to let the Hahn sisters have the final word, but I want to again thank you all for coming. And I echo everything that all of the panelists said tonight, and I would say, you know what, it is so important that we rally around causes that are important to women, and grab your girlfriends, and more importantly, grab the men in your life, right? They have to be part of the conversation. And so I want to thank the gentlemen that came out tonight. We appreciate you being here because we can change. We saw it with policy, with resources, and with action and networking. And men, you need to be part of this conversation as well. So thank you so much to everyone for coming. Okay, thank you. Okay, there you go. Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you. And I know the panelists are going to stick around for a few moments, so we'll be mingling if there's any final questions. But thank you so much. Thank you to the Hahn sisters, and we'll see you next year.